Today's topic is how to transition to legal nanny pay for nannies and employers. We are excited to have Franny Wood from Homework Solutions with us today. If you're just meeting, I'm Candy of experiencednanny.com. I have 30 years background in nannying and childcare with families around the world. On this channel, I share my advice, tips and experiences in childcare, as well as information from and by industry leaders. If this is something that interests you, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing the bell. This way, you'll be notified when I upload new content. Franny Wood is a client success specialist at Homework Solutions. Passionate about community and childcare, Franny has devoted her career to the household employment industry. With over 16 years of experience, she has used her education in psychology and child development to work with families in various employment settings, from traditional nanny roles to specialized work with neurodiverse children. An active member of her local nanny community, she has given talks at National Nanny Training Day and participated in childcare social groups and book clubs. Along the way, she has come to appreciate the nuances of household employment tax law and enjoys guiding both nannies and families accordingly. As an advocate for fair and legal pay, she is in a unique position to consult families on understanding tax obligations and how to benefit by offering total compensation packages to household employees. In her spare time, she is completing a second bachelor's degree in accounting and enjoys the outdoors and spending time with family. I'm not sure how much free time you have. It sounds like you have a busy life.
I do. I like it that way, though. It's always interesting, you know. I've always been a self-starter, so I sort of fell into nannying unexpectedly early on, straight out of high school. I used it sort of as a means to pay for college. I'm used to that hustle, and I think a lot of nannies are, right? Like we're used to, how do we piece our schedules together? How do we make this work? So, yeah, yes. I'm sure I'm one of many. Yeah.
I'm a bit like you. A question I hear a lot from parents and nannies is the one that we probably all hear. And so the nanny is being paid under the table, or the family is paying the nanny under the table, and they don't know how to move to legal pay. So could you walk us through why legal pay is important?
Yes, there are a lot of reasons it is important, and we'll talk broadly, and we can always zoom in on a couple of those things. But it's important for families and for nannies in different ways. And so, if you're a nanny, you're often amongst other nannies talking about, well, how do I get health insurance? How do I provide for what I need to handle every month, whether it's car payments or things like that. So we talk to our friends about it, but often where we get stuck is not having someone to talk to who knows what it's like to go from off the books to on the books. Like, I feel like rarely, there's this pattern where people will say, okay, I'm off the books, I'll just be on the books my next year. That's what I'm going to do. And I think the pandemic in 2020 really changed our view on that. There were a lot of nannies that went into unemployment, trying to figure out, okay, I don't have a job right now. I did, but now they don't want me because of just trying to take precautions, or maybe their employer lost a job and was home with the kids. There were a lot of differences. And what we saw is nannies wanted to get unemployment to make ends meet while they looked for the next job and tried to figure things out, and they couldn't. So part of the big push recently is unemployment. When you're on the books, you're able to get that. And when you're off the books, it's not that you can't eventually get it, but we think, well, of course, you could still pursue that. You could still, go that route and say, no, I was an employee, I just wasn't on the books, and you can file this paperwork. But in the meantime, your rent is due, your car payment's due, and you're waiting and waiting and waiting. And a lot of people didn't get checks. They were just hanging out there and then relying on family to help their friends. And so we don't talk about that enough, that struggle that I think nannies face in that month to month as they're either transitioning between jobs Like if a family decides, hey, by the way, we took a job, we're moving to California, well, guess what? You would be eligible for unemployment as you continue to look for another job. So there's just little things like that that help you bridge financial gaps that you need, and just protect you. I mean, it's the same thing. And some of these benefits help both employer and employee, like workers' compensation. So you think about workers' compensation that can protect the family in case a nanny, let's say she twists her ankle. She's coming down the steps, she twists her ankle. Things like workers' compensation insurance, you can only get it on the books. And that can cover things like lost wages because your nanny has to go to PT and she's struggling to fit the schedule. And it just provides some safety nets. I'm very big on safety nets. You know, whether that's a financial safety net for you as you're planning, or it's a family's financial safety net where they're going, we don't want to get hit with anything that we're liable for here. We don't want to get in trouble for not paying on the books because someone got hurt and then filed for a claim for us. You know, we want to make sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's so that we don't get stuck paying even more, you know. So there are a lot of benefits, you know, to highlight. Those are just some of the, I feel like recently the more prevalent ones that nannies are talking about, you know.
Yeah. So if a family is paying a nanny under the table and they want to move to paying legally, how do they go about it?
So I always say, I'm a big say, talk about it. Talk about it with people. Right now, I mean, we're at a very interesting point in our history where information is everywhere for us to get to, right? If you Google, how should I pay my nanny legally? You're going to get a whole list of ways to do it. And that's where it gets overwhelming and people go, oh, I'm just going to close this and I'm not going to look at it anymore. I need to take a break. But I think it's because it's a lot of information and it's scary, but it's actually all there, you know? So what we like to do and what Homework Solutions loves to do is we like to just share that information. We really like to approach this as from a place of knowledge. If you don't know, how can you make these changes? And obviously, like with anything, educating yourself on something, it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of hard work. But what payroll companies like Homework Solutions can do is break that down into like bite-sized pieces. So it doesn't feel as overwhelming to tackle. So I'm always telling people, just talk about it. Like, well, what are your questions about it? I have friends who have children who, you know, are hiring nannies and they're like, I've never done this before. What do I do? This is overwhelming. What if she doesn't want to be paid on the table because she's worried about her take-home pay being less? How does this work? Like, does it really matter? Could I get in trouble for this? And it's like, well, yeah, actually you can. And let's talk about that. What are you most scared of by paying folks? Is it organizing the information? Is it wanting to just have the freedom to hand someone cash and walk away? Like, where is your hesitancy? And 9 times out of 10, that hesitancy is, I just don't understand how it works. And it's too much. It's too much paperwork.
Yes.
And it's like, well, yeah, it is a lot of paperwork, but we live in a wonderful world of digital assistance now. It is nowhere near where it was years ago. Like now you can work with other companies who help you organize that. And it makes it so much easier to do. So I always just say, talk to people, start making phone calls and talk to people who aren't going to try to get something out of you.
Right.
I think that's a big thing too. That's one of the reasons, you know, I love working with Homework Solutions. We push, hey, you call us, we will answer your question. Doesn't matter if you're signing with us or not. And I think that's missing out there. You know, people don't want to step in and start asking questions because they're like, well, what am I really getting into here? You know, but we'll answer even nanny questions. And, you know, nannies aren't hired. That's,
yes,
you know,
I've called Homework Solutions before and asked a question and have been given a great answer.
Just to know, because that's where it starts, right? Knowledge is power. So, you know, we really like to share that to start with, and we want to encourage families and nannies to call us to say, hey, what does this look like? Even if you're not thinking about hiring someone and you're just trying to understand it, you can always call. So,
okay, great. And if a nanny, what would be your advice if a nanny wanted to approach their employer and say, you know, I've been thinking about this, I've been talking to my friends, I really think I need to be paid legally. How do you think they should approach their employers?
It's a very tough question. Every relationship is so different. You know, what I like to encourage is, first talk to your local nanny friends, because they're going to support you through this process more than anything. And talk to local nanny friends who you know are paid on the books. How does that look? What does this look like? Because part of this conversation might mean, hey, I know I'm going to have less take home pay. So while I'm asking them about being on the books, I also have to acknowledge that and say, I might need a little bit of a raise to make this work for my budget. And that's a sensitive thing to do. I think many nannies, it's very intimidating, especially even if you have a good relationship with your employer. And you're coming into work and you're thinking, I don't want to rock this boat. This is going fine. I like this situation. I don't want to screw this up. I don't want to lose this family because they don't want to put me on the books and now it's awkward. You know, that's a lot of anxiety to bring into a conversation.
Yes.
So, you know, to lighten that up a little bit, I'm going to tell you what, it just helps to talk to your nanny friends to say, are you paid on the books? What does that look like? Were you off the books and then did you get on the books? Did you have to talk to them about that, or did they come to you? Get familiar with just talking about it before you even approach your employer, because it's going to feel more comfortable then when you do. And I always tell, like, I have a lot of nanny friends. I was a nanny for a long time. I've dealt with all of these kind of conversations, and for me, I always like to say, like, don't feel like you have to know everything about what it means to be on the books. It's important to educate yourself too, but it's not your job to be an expert in this. Right. You're not the employer. And so nannies often feel like, I have to know it. They're going to ask me what to do about it. They can ask you what to do about it. You can also say, yes, you know what, there's a lot of good resources online. Or, hey, here's a number you can call that I know is a great number. You know, that's what we are trying to kind of convey in these conversations. Is like, you don't have to be the expert. You just need to know, what am I getting by moving on to the books? What do I deserve as an employee to protect myself? How can I receive certain benefits that I see my friends, my nanny friends receiving that I'm not receiving right now? So I think we need to change that sort of conversation a little bit, because I mean, I know personally I've been in the shoes of, hey, I would really like to be paid on the books. That's what my ad says. That's what my standards are. This is my background. And I've been in a place where someone says, well, no. If someone asks, it's a gift. Or if someone asks, we're not worried about it, you're a friend. We'll fix that if the time comes. That happens. It happens because people just go, I don't need another thing to tackle right now. We all feel that way, right? Even nannies feel that way. I don't need another thing. I don't need to move to direct deposit. I don't know what that will mean for my budget. It all is overwhelming. And I think if we come at this like together as a team, and you approach your family as a team, hey, I've been hearing a lot about this. This information is widespread. Nanny groups all over the country talk about this. You're able to use that as like a segue. You're like, hey, I noticed this conversation happening on this group. And upon digging into it, I'm realizing you might be doing things wrong, and just be surprised. Just even if you've kind of known you've been doing it wrong, just be surprised, because often parents, many of them also just don't know what they're doing either. And I think we feel like they should know too, but a lot of them don't, And so if you come to them and you're like, I think you might need to look at this. Can we like set aside some time? Maybe we can just sit at your computer at the end of the day and look up a couple things and get a game plan together to talk about it. Then you're tackling it like a team. You're not coming at where it's like me versus you. And I think that can help keep that relationship healthy as well.
Yeah. I mean, I see a lot of nannies say, I know I should have been paid legally, but I'll do that with my next family. It's the same with contracts. I'll do that with my next family. But I just feel like you're missing out on so much with this family. And I know the scary part is I might lose my job if I bring it up. I think all nannies feel that, like, if I bring up a difficult topic, I'm going to get fired. And I think your suggestion of talking to nannies and, having that conversation multiple times, it makes you more confident, so that when you have a conversation with your employer, it's easier.
Right.
I like that.
And it's not as intimidating to the employer. Because an employer, I've talked to some families who are just like, especially early on in my career, who were like, no, I think you're an independent contractor. Why should they specialize in understanding this
Exactly.
either? You know, I think we need to kind of remove some of this judgment that we like to throw at each other. Like, because nannies are afraid of that judgment. If they don't have the right answer, then they're like, oh, maybe they don't think I'm smart enough for this, or I don't understand. Like, I'm asking for this, but I don't understand it. And it feels like there's a lot of self-consciousness, right?
Yes.
It's the same for employers. You know, employers are like, I feel like I should know more about this, but I don't. And I don't want you to think that I don't, or that I don't care, because maybe I do, but I work a lot, I have kids, I'm running a household, I'm doing all these things too. And can I add one more thing to my plate to learn about this right now? Like, no, I can't. And so they just kick the can. We all do that in things in our lives, right? We kick the can down the road. We're like, we'll handle it later.
Right.
So, you know, I think locking in some time and slowing things down and just saying, let's talk about it candidly. And I will say, I have seen more household employers call, more so in the last month even, that, you know, I haven't worked for Homework Solutions for long, but they'll say like, oh, my nanny and I were talking.
That's good.
We're trying to figure out how to get her on the books. And I think that that's such a nice thing to hear, that like, okay, it's a collective conversation, but it's also a sensitive one. It's a financial conversation. Most people are not comfortable having those conversations, especially with someone who works in their home. And same from a nanny. Like, they're like, you know, I don't want you to know how much my rent cost or my car payment, or if I have debt I'm trying to get out of, or, you know, they don't want to have those conversations. It's private.
Yes.
So what we like to encourage is, for nannies, think about what you need your net take home to be. Think about what you need to make ends meet. Kind of compare that to rates and what maybe your nanny friends have been making and what your experience is like. Take in a lot of this information, but look at what you need. And then look at maybe what your goals are, where you want to get to from your net take home pay. And so that way, when you're going to talk to your employer or a potential employer, you're able to say, look, this is where I'd like to be with my take home. And from there, between the employer, between companies like Homework Solutions, you're able to then work together to see, okay, well, then that means your gross pay should be this. And for an employer, that means they can have a private conversation with someone like, you know, myself, or with my colleague Rachel. They can have a private conversation that says, if I paid my nanny this gross amount per hour, what does that mean financially for me paying taxes? How much more am I actually paying to have this different security around me as an employer? So it provides like kind of some separate private spaces for these negotiations to have, like almost like you're consulting with someone and they're consulting with someone, but it softens it a little bit.
Yes, it does. Okay. And what would you say are the advantages of paying a nanny legally for the parents? And what are the advantages to being paid legally for a nanny?
There's so many. So big ones that I think of for the parents: decreasing liability. Liability, like everybody knows that word, liability. You do not want to be in trouble for something just because you didn't take a few moments to make a phone call and learn more about this process. And sometimes, like I said, that has to do with someone twisting their ankle on the job. Sometimes it has to do with, you know, wage and hour disputes. Someone can say, hey, I was supposed to be paid legally. You never paid me legally, and I'm filing a dispute. And then you're on the hook for back taxes on top of it, so, you know, auditing. There's all of these different things that scream liability. But there are also benefits. When you're paying on the books, you are eligible for workers' insurance, which is not that expensive to get, especially if you talk to homeowners or renters policy holder. You know, you are able, or insurance provider, you know, you're able to kind of say, okay, I'm going to pay into the system. I am paying more in taxes. I'm contributing to this, but now I can get workers' compensation and protect myself. Now I can have a contract or a nanny work agreement that I can outline specifications of what I need for my child, so that I have control in the relationship in a way that protects my child. That I can say, you know, I only want you to take them to the library and these other places. You can't take them to your home because it's not, that child's not covered there. You can kind of specify these things that you otherwise would not be able to specify. And they're now that this big recent push, there are a lot of employment benefits. So if you're, let's say you work for a hospital, a lot of doctors, hire. Some hospitals and some employment agreements, as you're signing, ask them about what kind of credits or reimbursements they get for childcare, because that can count for nanny care as well. So you might get some reimbursements that way because you're able to say, hey, look, I am paying someone legally. This is verified. I am doing what I should be doing. And you can get reimbursements from your employer for such things. So there's just different programs out there that we also aren't asking enough about for our own situation. Yes. So I think of that. I often think about the good that you're putting out there. When you pay someone on the books, you're also helping them look at their entire employment package in a different way. And sometimes this does take extra conversations with professionals, but things like we use health insurance as the most simple example. Being able to do that in a tax-free way lowers that tax burden for you, and it provides health insurance for your nanny. So your nanny is getting a benefit. You're paying less in taxes overall. You're able to sort of construct these agreements in a way that offers benefits to both of you. So it doesn't just feel like, well, man, we have to handle all this. She doesn't get all the burden. We have to do it, Instead, it's just changing that conversation. Like, well, let's talk about that. If you want to lower your tax burden, let's talk about how you can do that, that kind of thing. And for nannies, protection as well. We talk about unemployment, we talk about potential for health insurance. A big one for nannies in cities now, you can get like transit passes and parking, tax-free reimbursements. So you get like these different benefits that you just don't even know are out there. Right. To be able to just function day to day and not worry so much about, your month-to-month bills, for instance. Instead, you're like, you know what? I do have my health insurance covered. It's like another job. It's through my employer, and this is working, So it's, I don't know, to me, it simplifies it. It looks like it's complicating it, but once you get it going, it actually simplifies it. And I think you have nanny retention. If I'm a nanny and I'm working for a family that's giving me health insurance, I am going to stick with them over a family that's not, and part of that's just, you have no other means of getting it than out of pocket. That's what you're going to do, So
I think it definitely gives the nanny more credibility if they're actually compensated for the job that they're doing in a legal way, because it's considered a profession rather than, so and so is coming to the house to look after the children and I just pay them under the table kind of thing.
Well, there's also, like, you think about so many nannies who work very, very long weeks being compensated for that time.
Yes.
It is very hard to be out of your home for most of the week. And you think, okay, you're there longer because, the employer needs time to get to their job. So maybe they're working 40 hours a week. You might be working 45 or 50 hours.
Yep.
So that's a long time to be out of your own home, away from your family or your animals or, your children who might be in the care of other people that you're, coordinating. So you need to be compensated for that time. Yes. And so that's why, being on the books that way, you're legally obligated to make sure you're paying things like overtime. And that way, okay, that person is compensated for their time. And I know that I've done what I need to do to make sure that I'm doing this legally. And I feel good about that. I know that like it's done and I don't need to think about it. So.
Great. And if a family wants to start the process, how long do you think it takes? Obviously, it's not science, so it depends on how invested the client is. But how long does it take from start to finish to get a nanny from under the table to legal pay?
So that's different for everybody, but I would say if you're committed and you're making the phone calls and really you got your information lined up and I'm ready to go, you can do it as quickly as 2 weeks if you wanted to go from off the books to on the books and paying direct deposit. For most households, I imagine it takes about a month or more just from the start of conversation to actually putting it in motion. Because it's overwhelming, it's intimidating. And then you're like, well, I'm going to call this company and then that, and I'm going to talk to my friends with their nannies. Let's see. And so it's a lot to digest. So I think it's a little different for every single household, but at the same time, I think that, it's possible. You just got to start. You got to start somewhere. So
Yes.
Start with a phone call, and depending on the state you live in, that can make a huge difference too. We have things like Homework Solutions. We have state tip sheets for all 50 states. So when you're like, man, I know that this is a little different from my state, but can someone answer those questions? You need to know where to go to be able to say, hey,
Right.
Your state requires workers' compensation. You have to get it. You don't have a choice, that kind of thing. So,
okay. And are there repercussions for people who haven't done it legally and then become legal?
not unless someone finds out. Okay. Which is not part of our job. So yeah, we are all about encouraging. We are like, look, we're going to work with you. Let's start the process.
Mm-hmm.
I think that often there's a concern, especially this year, because of the cash apps needing to report next year
mm-hmm.
for anything over $600. So I think next year we're going to have a lot of panicked people saying, how do we get this taken care of and make sure that we can move forward without getting in trouble? But at the same time, I think this is such a big thing to tackle. Don't think that you're going to just be under a microscope because you were paying off the books and now all of a sudden you're going on the books. Like if you're working together with your nanny and it's a respectful transition, I don't see why anybody would be knocking down your door because you're doing the right thing. Right. You're making the right move. It's like you were driving without a seatbelt and all of a sudden you say,
yes,
oh yeah, I should be putting this on.
Yes.
Like you're not going to get a ticket for last year when you didn't have it on,
Yep.
People are going to be happy. Oh, you're good. Great. You're on the books now. That's awesome. And there's a lot of encouragement out there for that. So.
Okay. And do you have any other tips you would like to throw out there right now?
Tips. I guess I could, just because I have such a strong background in nannying. With one tip for the nannies and one tip for the household employers. And they're going to be very similar. Nannies, talk to your friends. Talk to your friends. Talk to them over and over again. And I know like no one wants to talk about finances and no one wants to talk about, being on the books. Like it's like, no, I want to not talk about that. But just do it. Just try it. Just try. And for families, I say the same thing to people who are already paying rent. Say, hey, how did you do that? Did you do that straight out the gate, or did you need to transition later? Who did you talk to? Is there anybody I can just call to get some questions answered for my situation? Start talking, start seeing what's out there, and do a little bit of Google. How do I do this? How do I organize payroll? And that's what companies like Homework Solutions are out there to do as well, is to say, we can tell you how to do it, whether you work with us or not. We're going to tell you what it takes to do it and how to do it. And so that's where you start.
Fantastic. And if anybody wanted to reach you, how could they do that?
So I do not have a direct line yet. I'm hoping to. But you are always, always, always welcome to email me at Franny, which is FRANNY @homeworksolutions.com. I will answer any email you send me, even if it's just a quick question. I'm happy to answer it for you and just chat with you or set up a time to chat with you. You are also more than welcome to call the main Homework Solutions line, which is 800-626-4829. And you can always ask to speak to me from there, and they know who I am. So they'll say, oh yeah, let's see if she's available, and they'll transfer you to me. You can always talk that way too.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Of course.
And hopefully we'll have you back soon.
Of course. Sounds great. Take care.